A good story is akin to a gifted harp player. It knows just how to pluck the right strings to produce a wonderful melody that touches your heart. It's something that came to mind while I was playing The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince. As someone who has always loved children's books and still remember feeling overjoyed when my first story was published in our school magazine when I was just 5 years old, The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince really made a connection with me at an emotional level. In fact, I still remember the first time it came to my attention. I was mindlessly sifting through countless emails after returning back from vacation when I stumbled upon one from Nipponichi Software America. In it was a link to a trailer for one of their upcoming titles, a game that centered around a princess and a prince. I thought the embedded image was interesting, so I decided to put on my full-size headphones, clicked on the link, and proceeded to stare at my computer monitor. Suddenly, it felt as if time slowed down to a near standstill. Just what am I watching, I thought to myself, as I tried to make sense of all the colors, sounds, and words that flew before me. There was its unique storybook art style, a haunting look that sparked Tim Burton and Edvard Munch, except actually cute. Then there was its poignant, melancholy music and steering narrative crumbs that portended a grim yet charming tale. My senses just felt overwhelmed. Even after the trailer ended, I sat there quietly for several seconds to digest what I just saw. I then texted my niece, who loves playing video games and drawing as well. I didn't even know what to tell her. I just wanted her to see it. That trailer was the last thing I saw about The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince until my review copy arrived. I purposefully avoided any news or media about the game because I wanted to experience it all fresh and new. I did find it funny how a simple trailer for The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince did something that a lot of games have been unable to do for me in recent years. It made me feel like a kid who couldn't wait to play a new game. Yes, there was a lot of upcoming games that I was looking forward to, but none of them really made me feel like I was, well, a 10-year-old kid again, just waiting excitedly for a game to come out. It's the double-edged sword of reviewing games. When you play as many video games as I do, it's hard to be surprised anymore. Sometimes it even feels like a job, which is the perfect example of a first-world problem. Nevertheless, I try to give every game the care and consideration that it deserves. Video games, after all, are the culmination of the dreams, sweat, and at times, tears of the people behind them. You can criticize a game for its faults, but I believe you should do so respectfully without being mean about it. As someone who works as a reporter on deadline practically every day, I can empathize when you do your best and an article still isn't quite as good enough, or as thorough as you hoped it would be. This makes games like The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince especially rewarding. In an industry where rising costs and high risk have led to big companies dominating the landscape and sticking to safe and familiar formulas, it's nice to see a quirky little title like this one actually just exist. The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince might not have the fancy visuals and technology of big-budget titles, but it's rich in the kind of care and love that shows just how much the folks behind the game put their heart and soul in it. I say this as someone familiar with the writing process. I also say that as someone who used to dabble in art as a kid and stuck with it all the way through college. At least until I ran out of money for supplies and decided not to finish my art minor as a senior. You don't make a game like The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince because you want to make tons of money and capitalize on recurring revenue. You make it because you have an idea you're passionate about, and hope that other people appreciate the results of that passion strongly enough so the game does well financially and you can keep working on games just like it. I say that being fully aware of complaints in Japan about the game's pricing, about $70 give or take, in relation to its relatively short playtime. Then again, a lot of things in Japan, especially as it relates to otaku culture and hobbies, are expensive. Thankfully the game was lowered to $40 for its US release, which sounds a lot more reasonable. Now, I'm not saying that Nipponichi Software isn't interested in making money and only doing these games out of the kindness of their hearts. It is a business after all, and businesses, by definition, exist to make money. I mean, the phrase bottom line comes from the final line of a business balance sheet, after all. I do like how Nipponichi Software greenlights titles that usually wouldn't see the light of day at bigger game companies. Part of it is because NIS doesn't have the same resources to make those big-budget AAA titles, of course, but their games usually have this endearing and some might say rough charm to them, even if all the pieces don't necessarily come together smoothly. I say that as someone who has played a ton of NIS games after falling in love with Lepucell Tactics and Disgaea Hour of Darkness. Admittedly, there are times when I'll see a game from NIS with a great or intriguing concept, but it ultimately falls short in its execution, whether it be with gameplay, storytelling, or even both. I feel like games such as the first The Witch and The 100 Knight, for example, could have been much better. But then Nipponichi releases something like Yomawari Night Alone, which just surprises me and forces me to rethink my expectations for what games should be. To say that Yomawari is rough around the edges is an understatement, and yet it managed to call back emotions and fears that I used to have as a child, connecting with me on almost a primal level. The same can be said about The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince, though this one feels like a more hopeful story. Nevertheless, it makes me rethink of how I view and critique games. Oftentimes, I find myself reviewing video games and looking at them primarily on a technical level. After all, games by definition boil down to gameplay mechanics. Is the platforming good? Does the shooting feel right? Is the action compelling and rewarding? With The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince, those almost recede to the background as the narrative takes center stage. As such, my main concern in playing it was moving the plot so I can find out what happens to its two protagonists. That, of course, would be the so-called Liar Princess and her companion, the Blind Prince, an unlikely pair who find themselves journeying through a dangerous forest in order to meet a powerful witch that grants wishes. I'll try not to reveal too much of the plot, including those already included in previews and official descriptions of the game, as this is a story that turns out better the less you know about it. All I'll say is that the Liar Princess has the ability to turn into a wolf and is responsible for guiding and protecting the Blind Prince, a kind yet defenseless boy who's utterly helpless against the creatures that call the forest home. It's a relationship that is heartwarming and endearing, but also has this Damocles sword hanging above it that could cause it to crumble at any time. Part of it is due to the dangers of the forest, which puts them at risk of death should they take a wrong step. The biggest threat to their relationship, however, comes from the fact that it's built almost entirely on a lie. That deception is a constant source of guilt and concern for the Liar Princess. The poor girl certainly feels sorry about the prince's state, but also worries about being rejected once the prince realizes her to be the so-called monster that she actually is. It really makes you feel for the princess, especially given everything she has sacrificed in order to be with the prince and help him in this journey. The prince, meanwhile, is a sweet and kind soul who displays a lot of empathy as well as a wondrous childlike curiosity. That positive outlook and personality, however, hides a trauma born from the experience of losing his sight, an experience that is always in the back of his mind. This makes the princess and the prince an awkward pair, one that literally and figuratively stumble frequently along the way. It's that imperfect pairing, however, that ultimately makes them perfect for each other, as they grow to appreciate their differences and slowly strengthen their tenuous and shaky bond. I must say that I just love these two characters. They're just so likable, even with all their imperfections and flaws. If anything, it's what makes them perfect as protagonists. The princess, even after losing what she values most, demonstrates remarkable resilience in character, as well as a cheerful and caring personality toward the prince. I just find it adorable when she smiles every time she finds a flower and hands it over to the prince to make him happy. Personally, I think the game's art style and animation, combined with its sound, play a big role in making the story even better. One reason is the way they transform the game into a living, breathing children's book. From the design of the protagonists to the unique otherworldly look of the princess wolf form and the game's various creatures, the game boasts a captivating fantasy look that further enhances its narrative. The addition of small yet meaningful visual touches take things a step further. For example, I like how the word expression on the prince's face when he's alone turns into a smile every time you grab his hand as a princess. I just find myself appreciating little things like that because it shows the care and attention to detail that staff put into the Liar Princess and the Blind Prince. Further lending to the children's book vibe is the decision to use a single narrator, not just for telling the story but for voicing its characters. Nipponichi Software usually has no qualms in using a slew of voice actors in their games, which plays well to its otaku or geek fanbase. For this game, however, less is definitely more, and the storyteller approach enhances the game's storybook qualities. It even reminded me of times when my mom would read stories to me as a child, or when I would read stories to my niece when she was younger. It's the kind of stuff that just honestly warms my heart. For something to be considered a game, you need to have actual gameplay. Although not at the level of the game's narrative, the gameplay surprised me as well. If you followed my reviews over the years, you know that I deeply dislike escort missions in games. Whether it be Ashley in Resident Evil 4 constantly yelling Leon, or those accursed wagons in Final Fantasy XIV, I abhor escort missions with a blistering passion. The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince is essentially one big escort mission from start to finish, and yet it surprisingly works. A big part of it is likely due to the prince not really having his own AI. You have to either physically drag him with you or direct him to go to a certain spot. This means you know where he is and where he will be at all times, and you don't have to worry about him freelancing and wandering off to Lord knows where, and intercepting enemies with his super tanky half a hit point's worth of defense. Seriously, this guy has the durability of wet tissue paper, and I've seen the prince die from monsters just literally breathing on him. Then again, when the prince does kick the bucket, it was usually my fault. Sometimes I leave him alone without realizing that there's a hovering monster off screen. Other times I enter an area without scouting at first as a wolf, and the prince gets mauled by a wild boar. The expression on the princess's face when the prince meets an untimely demise is also positively heartbreaking, giving me even more reasons to keep my mistakes in check. Yes, I am that sentimental. Fortunately, the game is pretty generous with checkpoints, even when you forget to manually save. The gameplay also emphasizes the need for both protagonists to work together. The prince, despite his frail constitution compared to monsters, can help the princess activate switches, carry blocks, and light lanterns. The princess, while just as weak as the prince in human form, turns into a nigh-invincible powerhouse as a wolf and can lay waste to her foes. About the only threat against her in wolf form are bottomless chasms. I also like how the game shows the frailness of humans in comparison to the forest's creatures. Humans are clearly the weaker species in this game, and it doesn't hesitate to show you how. That's not to say that the princess, as a human, is useless. Human form allows her to toggle switches, pick flowers, and, most important of all, hold the prince's hand. I just find it utterly adorable when I watch them braving the perils of the forest hand in hand with a smile on their face. The gameplay does have its issues at times. I wish it was easier to position the prince when ordering him to go somewhere else. The physics also can go awry at times, such as the prince dying when leaping onto a platform that goes up and down, even if the distance normally wouldn't kill him when doing the exact same jump on the ground. Jumping up and down mushrooms, meanwhile, can be floaty and inexact, causing you to miss platforms or fall to your death. Some of the puzzles are also poorly worded, making it hard to understand what it is exactly you're supposed to solve. And while the wolf provides you the opportunity to imbibe in some action, the fighting is pretty basic. This is primarily a puzzle platformer, and folks looking for action won't be able to satiate their appetites with it. The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince even lets you skip stages if you wish, which leads to one of the bigger complaints about the game, which is its length. I tend to play games slowly and take time to search around and look for stuff, and it still felt a bit short to me. If you don't wander around as much looking for hidden flowers and leaves and just play it in a straightforward manner while quickly solving its puzzles, you can probably finish it in 5 hours or less. There are opportunities to replay the stages to collect stuff you've missed via stage select. But it's not enough to boost replayability for the game, especially since there aren't really that many ways that you can clear the same stage. Then again, I'm someone who grew up during the heyday of 8-bit gaming when certain games could be finished in a few hours without saving or continues. As such, length isn't as big a deal for me as long as the game provides a great experience within that limited time. Also, while the puzzle platforming isn't exactly groundbreaking, I thought it was solid, relatively polished, and not as rough as some of other NIS games. This is no glorified visual novel, and the gameplay is a legitimate part of the overall experience. That being said, the storytelling is truly the star of this adventure. As you uncover more bits and pieces of it, the narrative makes you think about life, love, and both the fragility and strength of human relationships. Despite being a monster, the princess treats the prince with more love than his own family does. And despite their relationship being based on lies, it ends up being much stronger and truer than many human bonds can be. The princess is just so earnest and pure that you can't stop rooting for her. And the prince is just so accepting and full of inner light, despite living in darkness, that you can't help but hope for a brighter future for him as well. It's almost ironic how the Liar Princess proves to be the most honest character in the game, while the Blind Prince is the one who demonstrates the keenest vision by seeing the inner beauty in a scary monster. I love these two characters so much that I played the game with a nagging sense of dread the entire time, fearing that something bad will happen to both of them in the end. Heck, I'm a grown man, and the game made me teary-eyed several times. Part of it might be due to the fact that I can understand the Japanese narration, though I hope that people who don't will still be able to appreciate it. Granted, I'm fully aware that this emotional reaction I have to this game could very well be just a me thing. Whether it be video games, food, or music, my palette has always been broader than the average person's, which some might not necessarily view as a positive thing. Some people, for example, take pride in liking only a few things, like specific food, or a certain handful of music artists. It's a way that a lot of people form their own unique identity as a person. Then you've got me, the guy who listens to alternative, heavy metal, rap, pop, dance, and yes, anime music. I'm also the kind of guy who enjoys pricey sushi at Tokyo's Ginza district one night, a coconut rice cake from a grubby stall in my hometown in the Philippines a few days later, and then return home to the United States where I stopped by In-N-Out Burger for my first meal back. When you like almost everything, does that make everything less special? Does that make you as a person less special? I often find myself wondering about those exact same questions. Even my tastes in games are the same. When I look at one of my cousins who enjoys first-person shooters and action games, then another cousin who loves racing games, and then my niece who loves JRPGs, platformers, indies, and Nintendo titles, it's like someone took me and split me into 3 people. I guess that means I'm not as unique as most folks. On the plus side, I like how I find joy from more things in life, even as I get older. It's also an accurate reflection of my worldview and my appreciation for different countries and cultures. Still, while my diverse taste makes reviewing games easier for me since I enjoy all genres, it also makes me feel worried if I'm serving certain pockets of my audience right. I could show The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince to the 2 cousins I mentioned, for example, and they will probably think it's boring. My niece, on the other hand, who's still young and is as much of a sentimental sap as I am, will likely think it's something special. I guess all I can really say is that I love The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince. I mean, this review is at 3,300 plus words right now, and I still feel that I haven't quite conveyed why I like it so much. It's certainly not the most mechanically challenging game. It also doesn't have the grand scope of high-profile AAA titles. What it does have is a lot of heart, which is driven by a story that pricks your heart enough to remind you that, well, your heart is actually still there. This game made me feel joy, sadness, despair, and hope, sometimes within seconds of each other. It made me think, man, I wish I could write and draw a children's story as good as this, for my niece, or my baby nephew, or even for other kids to enjoy. And don't let the fact that it looks like it's geared toward kids fool you. Like any good children's book, this is one tale that can be appreciated by anyone, regardless of how young or old they might be. The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince is not fancy or complicated or filled to the brim with all sorts of bells and whistles. But it reminds you that the simple things in life can truly be the best. It also teaches you what's truly important. Sometimes, all you really need in life is a hand to hold and show you the way. Anyway, that's my review for The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince. If you play the game, what do you think about it? As always, please feel free to leave any thoughts or questions in the comment section. Once again, this is Tabi Asobi, and thank you for watching.